All right, so if you guys remember back during the 2020 election, there was this company called Dominion Voting Systems, which was essentially operating a lot of the voting systems that were used during that election. And right after the election took place, of course, you had Donald Trump, all of his various lackeys like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, who were going around and insisting that the election was stolen and that Dominion voting systems were participating in the stealing of this election and handing it off to, like Venezuelan-backed communist Biden administration officials or whatever the fuck, right? And so in response to a lot of those claims, many of which were being propagated on outlets like Fox News, Dominion turned around and they filed a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against the network. And as a result of this lawsuit, we have just gotten some absolute gold from behind the scenes communications of a lot of these Fox hosts who are essentially just admitting that, number one, they knew that all of these lies were complete nonsense from the beginning and as they were covering this issue. But number two, it says a lot about just how they consider their job, how they consider the function of their job to actually be in, doing so-called journalism, right? So here from the Daily Beast, they say, revealed, Fox stars think Trump world figures are just as insane as you do. Now, first of all, keep in mind before we get into this lawsuit, it's going to be very, very difficult for Dominion to prove this defamation case just because of how free speech works in the United States. It's incredibly difficult, always has been, to, actually win a lawsuit like this, especially against a powerful network like Fox News. So whether or not they're actually going to win this case, I don't know, but it seems like once you hear a lot of the things that they were talking about behind the scenes, it seems like they have pretty much as strong of a case as you could possibly ask for in this kind of a situation. But they start off here saying, behind the scenes of the shows where they were amplifying baseless claims that the 2020 presidential election was rigged, the star hosts, producers, and executives of Fox News were furiously messaging each other. Okay, so this goes all the way up and down the chain. You had producers behind the scenes, you had hosts like Fox News and Laura Ingraham, and then you also had all the way up the chain to Rupert Murdoch himself, who were all talking about how completely ridiculous the things that people like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell were saying at the time. So they say, as the start of an explosive brief unsealed Thursday evening as part of Dominion Voting Systems' $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against the network, they argue that Fox News, and yes, of course they did. They basically found themselves in this kind of a situation where Donald Trump, incredibly powerful, he's, coming after this election and he's insisting that it was stolen from him. A vast majority of his supporters at the time, and I think still to this day, believe that the 2020 election was stolen from Trump and given to Biden. And as a result, obviously Fox News, a huge swath of their viewers and the people who were bringing in, the ad revenue for them, they also believed that the election was stolen. And so they had this audience capture type of a situation happen where a lot of these hosts knew behind the scenes that it was complete bullshit, but at the same time, they didn't want to piss off their audience or have their audience go off to watch Newsmax or OANN or any of these other networks that were, perpetuating this to a more significant degree. But they start off here saying, the partially redacted 192-page filing is stuffed with texts, emails, and testimony from marquee names like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham, lashing out at key Trump world figures and insulting them in bitter terms. Sidney Powell, an unguided missile, dangerous as hell, and poison, according to Tucker Carlson. Mike Lindell, on the crazy train with no brakes, as Gary Schreier, senior vice president of programming for Fox Business, phrased it. Rudy Giuliani, so full of shit, a Lou Dobbs Tonight producer snapped, and the concerns wormed their way up to the top of the food chain, according to the filing. On November 19th, Rupert Murdoch, Fox's powerful chairman, watched as his network broadcast the entirety of a press conference held by Giuliani and Powell, who took turns spewing vitriolic remarks about the election. Murdoch then fired off a text, really crazy stuff and damaging. Okay, so again, they're outlining this is all part of up and down the chain. Every single person in this cog, in this machine, knew that they were going and putting out all of these lies, and they still chose to air it, and therefore caused some sort of a, financial or reputational damage to Dominion Voting Systems, which again seems pretty airtight given what they're saying here behind the scenes. But they continue saying, on November 7th, the New York Post, another Murdoch family jewel, published an editorial begging Trump to stop the stolen election rhetoric, which he literally still has not stopped to this day, even as he's launching his 2024 presidential campaign. It seems like he's kind of eased off of it a little bit, but he still at least is outwardly saying that he believes it was stolen from him. And they helped yank Giuliani off of TV. And Scott, according to the filing, ensured the editorial received wide distribution inside the company, and that was the same day that Fox then called the election for President Joe Biden. And less than 24 hours later, Murdoch told Scott, quote, "We're getting creamed by CNN. Guess our viewers don't want to watch it." So again, you have this negative feedback loop where, you're entertaining a lot of these people, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Mike Lindell, the whole cast and crew of Trump world, and then the second that you call the election for Joe Biden and you start, easing off the pedal in terms of pushing the election was stolen bullshit, then you have a lot of your viewers who are bailing on the network. And so this is a kind of pressure that they felt like they were under and why they continue to feed this kind of a machine. So they say on November 5th, Bret Baier, Fox's chief political correspondent, texted, "There is no evidence of fraud, none, allegations, stories, Twitter, bullshit." And exactly a week later, a producer for the Ingram Angle texted an executive, quote, "This Dominion shit is going to give me a fucking aneurysm. As many times as I've told Laura it's bullshit, she sees shit posters and Trump tweeting about it." The rest of the producer's message is then redacted. And in late January, NPR and the New York Times filed a challenge to the suit's seal, which Fox's lawyers have fought to keep in place. So of course, Fox doesn't want these kinds of texts getting out, not just because it's like an embarrassment, but it also shows that a lot of these hosts are just completely shameless. I mean, listen, again, it's one thing, and this is part of why it's so frustrating being a leftist and having to respond to a lot of right-wing political commentators or liberal political commentators, which, don't get me wrong, this isn't a phenomenon that is unique to Fox News. I think there are liars and corporate stooges across the board at every single mainstream media outlet. But, I mean, again, the other reason they don't want this getting out here is because this makes it very clear to everybody that you're not even engaging with good faith actors, right? How are we supposed to have conversations or debates about policies or economic ideas or philosophical frameworks or any of the different core issues that average Americans are facing if people who are on some of the most watched shows in the entire country, who are supposed to be giving accurate and fair interpretations of information to their viewers, if they're just not only wrong about things, but knowingly wrong about things, right? How are you supposed to entertain those kinds of ideas or to, constantly debunk stuff that even the people who are pushing this out there don't even believe it in and of themselves? I mean, that's, again, why it's so frustrating having to deal with a lot of the propaganda that comes out of outlets like Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, because as you can see here, in a lot of these situations, they don't even believe what they're actually saying. So they say in one particularly revealing exchange, Carlson lashed out at Powell, one of the attorneys who very publicly sought to overturn the 2020 election, often appearing on the Fox's airwaves as she did so. "Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane," the primetime host wrote to Laura Ingraham just a few weeks earlier. So apparently, like, behind the scenes, Tucker's doing a little bit of investigative work and figuring out that yes, Sidney, the Kraken Powell, is not being entirely truthful about the types of claims that she was making. But we have a couple more that I wanted to point out here that weren't in this Daily Beast, but I thought the Daily Beast article, but I thought were absolutely amazing as well. Here we have from Will Sommer. He says Tucker Carlson repeatedly frets in text messages to his producer that Trump is a demonic force who could destroy him if Carlson missteps. Quote, "He's the undisputed world champion of that. He could easily destroy us if we play it wrong." Okay, so in Tucker Carlson's mind, not only is he facing sort of this pressure from the Fox News audience to continue floating the idea that, yeah, maybe the 2020 election actually was stolen, but he's also, in his mind at least, facing pressure from Trump directly, who he calls here a demonic force, which is, I guess, true. I mean, I don't disagree with him about that. It's just kind of funny to see somebody like Tucker Carlson, who jerks Trump off on like a daily basis, come out and say something like that, or I guess say that behind closed doors. But, I mean, he's also facing a lot of this pressure directly from Donald Trump, who he knows if he goes on primetime and pisses him off or says the election, firmly was not stolen and that Trump is lying about that entire thing, that Trump could then go on, like, I don't know, Truth Social or Twitter at the time. I guess this was before January 6th. It was before he was banned. So maybe he throws a couple tweets out there and could potentially, jeopardize the career interests of somebody like Tucker Carlson. So again, this isn't your fucking job as a journalist. Your job is just to report the truth. But these are the types of things that are going on in their minds behind the scenes. So another one here about Janine Pirro. Pirro, who is one of the most insane people on Fox News, which is saying a lot, but they say some interesting details about Jeanine Pirro in the Fox News messages. A Fox executive felt sure that she was looking for a job at a competitor like Newsmax, and Fox canceled her show on November 7th because they were afraid that she would push stolen election theories, saying she is crazy. So even some of the executives at Fox News are like, who the fuck is working for us? Like, why are we hiring these people when they're actually legitimately this insane? And honestly, Jeanine Pirro, it's one thing for Tucker Carlson. Obviously I disagree with him on basically every single issue you could possibly, run through, both of us. But at the same time, you got to kind of appreciate that he is probably the most successful white nationalist, right-wing propagandist in the country. He's at least decent at what he does, right? He has some sort of a skill to his craft and the type of messaging that he puts out there, right? He convinces a huge amount of people that what he's saying is actually true, and even if he doesn't believe it behind the scenes. But with somebody like Jeanine Pirro, I genuinely believe that she is like that insane and constantly drunk all the time, and like actually would have believed that the election was stolen and would be totally eating up everything that was coming out of Trump world at the time. But they add on to this here, saying that not only do they all know that this was bullshit behind the scenes and continue to enable this to be spread on their network, but then also you have this. So they say, meanwhile, those who attempted to perform even basic due diligence were allegedly punished for doing their jobs, as Kirsten Fisher, then the network's White House correspondent, wrote in a text at the time. She was responding with exasperation after attempting to fact-check November 19th's really crazy press conference. After her fact-check, the filing claims that Fox's executives were not pleased, and Fisher received a call from her boss, Brian Boughton, immediately after it, in which he emphasized that higher-ups at Fox News were also unhappy with it, and that Fisher needed to do a better job, and this is a quote, of respecting our audience. Okay, so again, they don't even view their jobs as like, I'm going to give you guys the information as it is, in as unbiased a way, or at least be open about my biases, and try to portray it in an accurate and truthful way. They're talking about this as if like you just need to basically regurgitate what some of the most deranged people within our audience want you to say, regardless of whether or not it has any basis in reality whatsoever. So they say in a statement on Thursday, a Fox spokesperson said there will be a lot of noise. So this is their pushback to this entire lawsuit, right? They say there will be a lot of noise and confusion generated by Dominion and their opportunistic private equity owners, but the core of this remains about freedom of the press and freedom of speech, which are fundamental rights afforded by the Constitution and protected by New York Times v. Sullivan. So, okay, that's basically the argument that they're going to try to use to win this case or defend themselves in this case against the Dominion lawsuit. Okay, so is that going to work? Maybe. Again, we have very, stringent guidelines and parameters when it comes to free speech in this country. I mean, some of the best in the world, arguably, although we do still have our flaws when it comes to, other situations. So it will be an uphill battle for Dominion to actually prove that they were not only lying about this, but they knew that they were lying about this, that this went all the way up and down the chain, that there was malice that was used in this and intent that was used in this. But honestly, again, running through that entire article, seeing what they were saying behind the scenes and contrasting that to what they were airing out there on their network at the time, it seems like this is as strong of a case as you could possibly get. So I'll keep you guys updated on whether or not they actually end up winning this case. But one more thing that I wanted to point out here from Business Insider, and this is from a couple of years ago, this is from September 24th, 2020, but just to emphasize the point of how a lot of these hosts, especially people like Tucker Carlson, how much they actually know that they are truly bullshit artists and don't even really believe a lot of what they say and don't even have the basic respect for their own viewers in, being able to interpret what they are actually trying to get across in their messaging. So here from Business Insider, they say Fox News won a court case by persuasively arguing that no reasonable viewer takes Tucker Carlson seriously. Okay, this is a defense that we've heard from Alex Jones, for example, in the past in some lawsuits he's been involved in, where he'll get up there and he'll basically say listen, I'm playing a character, this is so outlandish, so ridiculous that nobody could possibly believe that I'm being serious. Well, the problem with that is that if you're going to say a reasonable viewer wouldn't take you seriously, especially in the case of Alex Jones, well, it's his viewership is not really made up of the most sound and reasonable people, right? And same goes with Tucker Carlson. I mean, we're talking about literally literally the single most popular primetime host in the entire country. This network, Fox News, the single most watched network in the entire country, right? So the idea that like this is equivalent to Alex Jones, which, you know, I don't even believe the Alex Jones argument in that case. I mean, obviously he is playing a character, but his viewers don't think he's playing a character. But it would apply even less so to somebody like Tucker Carlson. I mean, Tucker Carlson doesn't get up there and like, you know, make it clear to his viewers that he's playing a character or that he's lying about some of the things that he's saying or completely exaggerating some of the things that he is narrativizing about. Okay, that's not clear to the average Fox News viewer. And I guarantee if you were to poll, you know, the average viewers of somebody like Tucker Carlson's show, right, they're going to answer that, yes, of course, they believe what he's saying more so than they believe what basically any other, you know, journalistic outlet would be saying. They definitely trust the information that's coming from Tucker Carlson more than they would from CNN or New York Times or MSNBC or, you know, any other, you know, outlet in the country. So they certainly believe what he's saying, and I think they certainly believe that he believes what he's saying. But these are the types of arguments that they're willing to make when they actually have to go to court and answer for some of the lies that they were putting out there. They say, oh no, I'm just playing a character. No reasonable person would ever possibly think that, you know, I'm giving an honest depiction of reality in my monologues that I'm doing on a daily basis. So, I mean, again, these are the types of people that they are. They're obviously complete frauds. They're obviously complete con men. But I think this says, you know, something broader about our media ecosystem where, and this goes again, not just for Fox News hosts, but all across the board with mainstream media, they are different on camera than they are off camera. And of course, there are all of these other perverse incentives, things like, you know, what Noam Chomsky outlined in Manufacturing Consent that go into the structure of corporate media in defending the interests of, you know, corporate America, that go into defending the interests of the billionaire class and maintaining the status quo, defending the military-industrial complex. So, I mean, this really should be a broader critique of the entire media ecosystem that we have here in the United States. But I just want you guys to understand and contrast how people in independent media, right, a lot of the people who you guys probably watch on a regular basis and get your media from, your news from, instead of getting it from mainstream sources. I mean, I can tell you that everybody that I know, at least in leftist circles, who does this for a living, who makes videos like this on a daily basis, they at least, I can say with 100% certainty, are the same person on camera as they are off camera. They actually believe what they are saying, and they will lay out their arguments clearly and try to engage with things in an honest and direct way. Okay, I hope that you guys would trust that I'm doing the same here. You might not agree with everything that I say, but I promise you that, you know, I'm actually giving you my honest interpretation of what is going on, trying to give you the most, you know, factually based information that I can get my hands on, and framing it in a way that corresponds with, you know, the economic and, you know, philosophical frameworks that I abide by, right? So, I mean, that's my takeaway from this, is that, you know, it's no surprise that these people are shameless liars, but, you know, this is just laying it out there right in the open for everybody to see.
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best Politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying